Thank you, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be here again at Tel Aviv University today, and it's a big challenge to speak after all these distinguished senior military officers. I've been running with the military for a long time. I was also an officer of the reserve. I joined the military at the time of General Karmer in '77, but my officer of the reserve lasted less than 2 years, and then my vocation was more for a career with the United Nations. But if you are familiar with the Jungle Book, I feel a little bit like Bagheera running with a pack of wolves, and I'm well accepted, and I share with them the hunting season. But back to peacekeeping. This brief introduction of my previous experience will serve with the questions, because I've been in peacekeeping both in the field where peacekeeping is all about, but also in the headquarters where the job with the member state and the Security Council is a crucial aspect of peacekeeping. And very often a misperception is to ask peacekeepers and to ask the mission questions that should be addressed to the Security Council and ultimately to member states. And this is something that we might develop later on. Okay, where are we? Okay, we start with the first slide, please. I will be, as a good Italian coffee, try to be short and awakening. And the mandate, we go back to 78 and 425 and 426. And the three elements of that mandate was monitoring the cessation of hostility, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Lebanon, and reestablishment of Lebanese sovereignty all over the Lebanese territory. This definition of mandate in 78 is very important because it's still at the core of the mandate of the expanded UNIFIL that we're having now after the conflict of 2006. The mandate remained valid, and you can go through to the task under the expanded UNIFIL mandate in 2006 with Resolution 1701. Again, while you're reading, although the wording of the opening of Resolution 1701 takes from Chapter 7, is a major concern of the international community vis-à-vis the situation which is deteriorating in southern Lebanon, the mandate is a Chapter 6. In other words, we are there at the invitation of the party. Both Lebanon and Israel accepted the UN to be deployed over the southern part of Lebanon in order to monitor these events. Chapter 7 with the United Nations is extremely rare. I give you a few examples. Was Eastern Slavonia, after the Dayton Accord in the Balkans, at a certain point, that small portion of territory, which was at the end given to Croatia, was still under, with a majority of Serbian population. So the United Nations, for a small period of time, for 3-4 years, kept a sort of administration, temporary administration, until the situation was established, was defined. Similar in East Timor. So we are really talking of mandates that are taking advantage of a hole in the sovereignty of a country and putting the UN at the core of that function. Very rare to find a consensus at the international level in order to have a green line for a Chapter 7 operation. Critical factors for the Resolution 1701 to work, as we have seen in the other peacekeeping operation, the commitment of the parties. Peacekeeping represents a window of opportunity for the parties to reach an agreement. It is not for the peacekeepers to impose an agreement. We don't have the strength, we don't have the capacity, we don't have even the mandate for that. The parties need to sit down and accept and agree on a peace treaty, as it happened with Israel and Egypt and Israel and Jordan. We are facilitators. Strong relationship with the Lebanese armed forces. Since part of our mandate at this stage, after the withdrawal of the Israeli from southern Lebanon, what we need is the consolidation of Lebanese authority all over the Lebanese territory. Our key partner are the Lebanese armed forces. We need to work with them, we need to empower them. Their capacity is essential in order to get and to see this progressive capacity of working as a national army. Accept and support of the local population. I mean, we work with them. We are in their territory. We are still, by and large, in a benign environment with a strong acceptance, and we have to work with the population in order to prevent the spoilers to avoid our job to be done. And we were subject of terrorist attacks directed against UNIFIL. Commitment and support of troop contributing countries and Security Council. We were discussing with the professor before, peacekeeping is political. The military might not be the ideal tool in order to have peacekeeping, but I cannot imagine a better one. We need to deal with the military strength, and we need to work in order to have the political will implemented in the area, in the critical area, in the area with high level of fragility. And regional developments. We touched already on the fragility on the region and the major concerns that emerged from the presentation of my colleagues before. UNIFIL on the ground is organized in two main sectors, Sector West and Sector East, and you see that we are having a strong presence along the blue line, which is also the line of withdrawal, is that famous line that we are monitoring, and we consider the line that the Israeli had to withdraw for in order to guarantee Lebanese full sovereignty. I don't bother you with a lot of numbers, but UNIFIL is the largest mission. We have 12,000 soldiers and another 1,000 of Navy guys, plus 1,000 civilian, of which 700 locals, 300 international. So roughly 14,000 people in a relatively small territory compared to the other missions. On top of the regional mandate, since one of the tasks of the mission is to prevent the southern part of Lebanon to be used as a fertile soil in order to launch hostile actions against Israel, the mission accepted an invitation by the Lebanese government to help them in order to strengthen the control of their territorial water. So the Navy, which is unusual, there is not such a thing as a Navy force in peacekeeping, was introduced with UNIFIL, is a reaction to a request by the Lebanese government, which considered it as an important tool. We presented it to the Security Council, who accepted it, and then we have a Navy helping the Lebanese armed forces in order to operate in interdiction of arms smuggling, and also as an element to train the Lebanese armed navy, as we were mentioning before. Key role of the mission, or at least one of the key tools that we are using, is liaison and coordination. We have plenty of military for that area of operation, it's true, but I think that more than the numbers, what makes the mission extremely effective, what is the leverage that the mission has, is this capacity of liaison as coordinator, as was presented very well by MFO, and the idea of addressing each issue at this lower possible level. And I would say it's very difficult to measure the success of a peacekeeping operation, because more than be measured for what the peacekeeping operation achieves, the peacekeeping operation is measured for is able to prevent. So how can you measure what you really prevented? But I can test and test that several times we were very, very close to dangerous escalation that would have probably brought back full hostility in southern Lebanon. So we are having all these liaison interaction that goes at the head of state level, or at least Ministry of Defense and Prime Minister, down to the coordination, the daily coordination with the units. Key in this coordination mechanism is the tripartite meetings. Now, it's interesting, even the pictures, these two pictures are interesting because as part of the tripartite, the parties are not authorized to take pictures together, no handshaking. According to the rules, they are not authorized to talk directly to each other, or at least one party is not. And as a consequence of it, if we want to take a picture of the room where we meet, you take a picture on the Lebanese side, and then you turn, and you have the UNIFIL people and the Israeli side on the other. It was not part of the mandate. If you read the 1701, you don't read the tripartite anywhere. So it's an initiative, is a creative proposal that UNIFIL was capable of putting and offering to the party, which developed in something extremely productive. We have seen the colonel before, presenting it as a satisfactory mechanism that unfortunately we don't have with the Syrians, but is bringing on the table directly with two people which are technically at war, issues that can be addressed, and particularly lessons learned that can be implemented in order to avoid terrible mistakes and misunderstanding not to reoccur again. I mean, you are, I think, aware of the terrible incident that occurred in Al-Adese almost 2 years ago, two summers ago, and it's absurd that the whole thing started for the trimming of a tree, and escalation went on for the delay in communication and the increased tension between the parties. We are having today, just before coming here, I was on the other side, and we were discussing of cutting a tree on the new fence that and the wall in Metula Kafarkila, that part that has been under construction right now. And there is this tree that is still very, very small, but the lessons learned, it cut the tree as long as it's small, because we don't want to have the same sort of problems. Essential mechanism, we bring to the parties the result of our investigations. The party might not agree to all the details, but often there is consensus on the lessons learned and the recommendation and the liaison mechanism in order to accelerate the communication and prevent misunderstanding, particularly preventing incidents to occur and escalation to occur, which are as dangerous as the incidents themselves. Parties have been prepared to advance with practical solutions to address a number of ongoing issues on the blue line. They help a lot to stabilize the situation that often starts with a small incident of no relevance and escalates with life-threatening incidents. Blue line marking. One of the reason or the cause of a lot of incidents is that the blue line as such is difficult to perceive. I mean, yes, there is a blue line, but first of all, it's not blue. Second, it's not marked clearly. And third, although the technical parts by now have maps and digitals and everything, certainly the ships so far didn't learn, and the shepherds are following the ships and so on. So we are having a series of incidents, again, that are starting from misperception, or at least pretended good faith, and have a potentiality of escalating a lot. So one of the goals has been to make visible the blue line. And how does it work? On the Israeli side, yes, there is a technical fence that has built, by and large, I have to be honest, the majority is south of the blue line, so it's not a contentious issue, but there is still a large portion of territory which is between the technical fence in the proper part of the blue line and the blue line itself. So for instance, if the Israeli forces, the IDF, wants to pass on the northern side of the blue line, repair something, prune a tree, or do something, they are totally in a legitimate action to do so. The perception on the Lebanese side is Israel is invading Lebanon again, and you read the article is in a newspaper, is a big alarm. Similarly, often you have individuals, sometimes they claim to be shepherds, sometimes they are not, sometimes they are tourists, sometimes they have an aggressive posture, sometimes they are aggressive towards IDF patrols on the other side. I mean, all these actions are quite dangerous. So the delimitation of the blue line became one of the factors that we wanted to address, and we are doing it pretty fast. It was one of the goals. The other element that of continuous and permanent violation is Gajar. As I mentioned before, in the year 2000, the Secretary General said, Israel, well done, you are withdrawn from all the part of Lebanon you had occupied. Then there was the 2006 situation again, and now we have part of Israeli population, a small part in a village in the northern part of Gajar, that is recognized by both Lebanese and Israeli as, for the northern part, Lebanese territory. So we have a humanitarian issue of some Israeli citizens that are living in Lebanese territory, and his issue remains one of the permanent violation that is triggering on the other side the condemnation about this permanent violation, and is one of the arguments used by Hezbollah in order to justify their resistance. So we tried several possibilities in order to minimize this violation, or at least to offer an interim solution. How did it occur? Here is a couple of pictures. One is in 57, and the original village, as you can see, is south of the blue line. With the absence of a frontier or a border, the village expanded on the flat part of the territory, and then when they marked the blue line, it happened that the blue line, based on the 1923 agreement, at that time was France and England, and the 1949 armistice cut the village in two. So we are trying to work on this permanent violation. UNIFIL achievements. The cessation of hostility continues to be respected by the parties. So by and large, what we had in terms of incidents since 2006 is probably the lowest of the last 30 years. So in terms of satisfaction of the clients is very high. They say, okay, don't touch it the way it is. We are satisfied with UNIFIL. The blue line continues to be respected by the parties. They say, okay, we accept it. It is not a border. It's just an agreement between the parties. A border can be only defined by the two governments. We are just using an artificial separation, but it works. The government of Lebanon and LAF, the Lebanese Armed Forces, have control of the territory. As we mentioned before, I was here since 2003 in Jerusalem. At that time, if you were going on the northern front, you could see Hezbollah position, and the question was, who are these people? If anything happened, they do not represent a state. Now what you see on the other side is state, are people in uniform with the Lebanese flag. For the large part of the population on both sides, there is a return on normality, in the sense that the number of incidents have reduced significantly, fear has reduced, and activities are coming back. Strong liaison and coordination mechanisms in place are reassuring that incidents can be addressed in a relatively short time. The parties are committed and are participating to the tripartite forum, even at very short notice when we have indication of incidents or deterioration of the situation. The LAF is getting stronger, and more we can hand over responsibility to them. The future. Despite all these nice words, I think that there is still a missing opportunity. Peacekeeping goes as far as an operation can go, offers an opportunity to the party to sit down and negotiate a peace treaty. Are the two governments getting any closer? I'm getting rid of my UNIFIL head now, and I'm talking as an individual, and I'm a bit dissatisfied. I don't see the government of Lebanon or the government of Israel sitting down for a direct talk about the peace, although the situation along the blue line or on that front is the best that they had, at least for the last 6 years. The situation is not easy. I mean, it's very, very fragile, and the parties are extremely vocal. You read the newspapers, and there are moments in which you think that the war is coming in a matter of weeks. I mean, it's almost seasonal, and at a certain point, there are people that I know in Lebanon that come to me and say, is it true that the Israelis are planning to invade next week? And you're like, I don't know, but that doesn't look to me. But there are these rumors that are creating and generating a lot of panic. So a lot of it is how to reassure and create a climate of confidence. It's a very costly operation. I mean, 13,000 troops on the ground is a lot of money at a time in which most of the economy worldwide are looking where to make savings. And that's why we have few European countries already announcing and reducing already some of their contingents. And this is a matter of concern. It's a matter of concern because there was continuity that would represent for the parties a reassurance. So the commitment of the troop contributing country is there, but how long we will be able to sustain it is a question mark. And the other thing is the region. We were discussing before that the region, and particularly Syria, the situation in Syria, is creating a lot of concern, and we are following it, monitoring very closely. The good part, the good information is that the area of operation has been calm and continue to be calm, so is not generated from our area of operation a tension that could be spilled over to the region. But the area is so fragile that could be easily affected by what is happening in the region. So far was not. And I close here. I think. Thank you.